So for those who don't know, kind of what is the mission or ethos of the Working Families Party?
Yeah. So at the Working Families Party, we are building our own party and we're building it on top of the broken two-party system. And the mission of our party is pretty simple. It's to put working people first. And, it's not just like a mission that's an idea. It's a thing that's been happening for more than 2 decades. We were founded in 1998, and we have been recruiting, training, and electing working class leaders all across the country, organizing with them to win major victories like higher wages, paid sick leave, affordable housing. Yeah, that's us and what we do. And my role, I really focus on building our state level parties. So we have state chapters in a dozen states and building towards them in many, many more. And I have the really amazing privilege to work with our state level leaders to make those parties as strong as possible and to build us in new places.
So you say that the Working Families Party is trying to build on top of the two-party system, and I think a lot of people in this country are, I think most people probably are fed up with the two-party system, but don't, you know, uh, but also understand that our politics seems to privilege that system. So what is your philosophy on that issue? Kind of, can you break down what that means to be building on top of the two-party system?
Yeah, 100%. It's pretty nuanced and pretty complicated. So you're totally right, right? Like every year, more and more people don't identify with either major party, and especially like working class people have been steadily leaving the Democratic Party. And this is so core to why WP even exists in the first place and why we do our work. So we're really trying to build an alternative to the two major parties. But as you point out, like that's not an easy thing to do in an electoral system that really privileges the two major parties and really pushes everything else to the margins, right? And we believe that we need to contest for governing power today, not in a decade or a century, because the decision, like look out the window, like the decisions our elected leaders are making every single day have deep impact on the lives of everyday Americans. So we try to hold all of that with a lot of tension and nuance. And we really see it as our job to create non-delusional political strategies in our current system while building the power necessary to change it. So that means that sometimes we run candidates through Democratic Party primaries. Other times we run candidates on our own. We take on elections from city council to the US Senate, wherever we think there's a path to win, and where winning will deliver real gains for working people. And everywhere, what we're trying to build through that electoral work is a third force in American politics that is shaped and led by labor unions, community organizations, and political activists that is strong and durable enough to be capable of acting both sometimes with the Democratic Party and sometimes independently from it and sometimes within it. I mean, I think the wealthy and powerful would tell us that what we're trying to do is impossible in a two-party system, and they're counting on us to believe that that's true. And our job is to show that there's a different way that we can work within the system we have, build the power we need to change it. And that's what we wake up every day trying to make happen.
And what do working families need? What are the policies that you guys are most excited about, platforming and promoting?
Yeah, I mean, I think most fundamentally, working families need to see government that speaks to and with them and works for them, right, at the local, state, and federal level. So it's really easy to focus on what that means from a policy perspective, like minimum wage, paid family leave, the right to organize a union, funding for healthcare, public schools, and other programs that our families rely on, right? Like, and also what we think is really important for them to see themselves, like in government. So we think it's really important to elect people with working class backgrounds into governing roles and also for them to see their leaders really fighting with them when it really matters. So like these are I mean, dangerous times is probably the understatement of the decade. And people are really hungry for a fight right now. And we saw that last weekend with the No King's Day protests being one of the largest single days of protest in American history. People are also hungry to see that fight from their elected officials, right? So they need both like the policies that are going to improve their lives and make government work for them, and then the leaders that are going to fight for them. I think it's just that simple. And, you can even look at an issue like immigration, right, where public opinion has the potential to shift significantly and where the escalating and unlawful actions of the Trump administration have been tearing families apart and disappearing members of our communities. And we've seen that WP elected officials are really standing up, whether it's Newark Mayor Ras Baraka making regular routine oversight visits to a detention center, or New York City Comptroller and mayoral candidate Brad Lander standing firm while asking, an ICE officer for a warrant while escorting someone from a court hearing. The arrests of both of those officials just for doing their basic job shows us what it means to use the power that we have to stand up to Trump. And it's an invitation and agitation for us all, every single one of us, whether we're elected officials, whether we're, just individual community activists, to use all of our power to do the same.
And who were some of the candidates that you're most kind of excited about right now?
Oh, that is like a really hard question to ask me. I mean, I guess that I would have to start by talking a little bit about Kendra Brooks, who is the Working Families Party minority leader on the Philadelphia City Council. I won't use our time to go into the strange, structure of Philadelphia election law that makes that true. But she and her colleague Nick O'Rourke are a Working Families Party minority of two. And they are forcefully leading the Philadelphia City Council. And I like really lift up Kendra because she is like a working class Philadelphia mom of four people. And every single thing she does is because the fights that we're fighting are incredibly personal to her. So before she ran for office, she was housing insecure. She lost her home to a sheriff's sale after losing her job due to Republican budget cuts. And in city council, she's championed making permanent a groundbreaking eviction diversion program that's been hailed as like one of the best in the country. She was formerly a domestic worker, and in May, she passed groundbreaking, first of its kind legislation offering sweeping protections to domestic workers who have historically been excluded from labor law protections, for racist, sexist reasons. So I would always lift up Kendra. One of the coolest things about my job is that WFP is organizing groups of state legislators in about a half a dozen states and kind of, working to get them to not just run for office and win, but to actually govern together inside of the legislature. And I've got to spend a lot of time visiting our state legislator groups over the past year, and they're all my favorites. So it's hard to lift up one. But one recent electoral victory that I would lift up is in New Jersey, where the Working Families Party won last year a decades long fight. We called it Abolish the Line. Again, super weird quirks of state and local election law, but the short version is basically it changes the ballot design in New Jersey in a way that made competitive primary elections possible for the first time, this really in New Jersey history, this past cycle. And just a couple weeks ago, we saw Katie Brennan, Jersey City community activist, take a big risk in this new system and run an incredible, progressive, independent, anti-machine race. And she won a six-way race and really just showed the whole state that organized people can beat party bosses, and really took advantage of this new change to the ballot design and just sort of the political culture in New Jersey. And then, I'd be remiss to not just also shout out Representative Greg Casar, who's a good friend of mine, a former labor organizer, city council member with a, laundry list of progressive accomplishments from his time on the Austin City Council, and now the organizer in chief of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And, I don't think I'm sure many folks here know more about him than the state and local folks, but I see him as a real rising star.
And then have to mention Zoran in New York City, who I think you guys ranked as number one on your ballot. What would, if he were to win this primary, what would that mean? And then eventually, become the mayor. What would that mean for kind of the progressive movement in this country?
Yeah. I mean, I have to just say, like, Zoran is running an incredible campaign, and it is inspiring and bringing so many people into the political process, whether that is like the hundreds of volunteers that are knocking hundreds of thousands of doors in New York City, whether that is first-time voters, like the early vote numbers are pretty incredible when you're just looking at new people coming into the system. It's just beautiful. And we're so proud to have ranked Zoran number one. We're also incredibly proud of the work that the New York Working Families Party has done to cohere a slate of four candidates, all running united to stop Andrew Cuomo from being the mayor of New York City. I think the like whatever happens on Tuesday, what this all has done has turned basically like a David versus Goliath fight, which, has had like millions and millions of dollars of outside spending from, like Trump aligned Bill Ackman and DoorDash and Airbnb and all of our favorite corporations. For Cuomo. So like really like against all odds, we've turned this into a close and hotly contested race. And that in and of itself is a tremendous victory that will reshape New York City politics for the next decade. And I'll also say, the cross endorsement between Zohran Mamdani and Brad Lander was the first of its kind under the New York City ranked choice voting system. The thing about doing state and local elections is like the complexity of each system is really different. But to me, like that is a unique and beautiful demonstration of what it means to exercise politics in the way that we need to, not as like an ego-driven fight to the death, but as a team sport between people trying to accomplish the same outcome. So like that's just really, really a beautiful thing to see. And we're all going to be, well, I'm going to be up on Tuesday knocking door or like, at a poll sites, and just can't wait to see what happens. And if anyone here is a New York City resident and hasn't already voted, we're reminding folks to rank Zohran Mamdani, Brad Lander, Adrian Adams, and Zelnor Myrie. Sorry, that's our full slate. And of course, please, please, please do not rank Andrew Cuomo.
It has been one of the cooler things to see the kind of connection coalition between those four candidates and seeing them all show up when Brad Lander was arrested. It's just I've been thinking a lot about what would it look like if more of American politics was like that, and it would be pretty cool. And then speaking of interesting kind of allegiances, we're in this very interesting populist moment where there is this growing kind of anti-establishment right and left. And what do you and what does the Working Families Party make sense of kind of the connections between that kind of growing sentiment? Someone like a Josh Hawley voting or supporting, raising the minimum wage and collaborating with Bernie Sanders on legislation. What do you make of kind of that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to where we started our conversation, which is that there are more and more people who feel, frankly, quite justifiably pretty left behind or screwed over by the political establishment, whether that's the Democratic establishment or the Republican establishment. And, in that context, Trump and many of his Republican allies are selling a fake populism that they say speaks to that, making us think they're on our side and making immigrants or college professors or whoever they're pointing at today the enemy. And the point of this is obvious, right? Is to distract us while they can give tax cuts to literally the richest people on the planet. And so, I think it's our job to show what's really happening. And that's why we've been organizing to make sure voters know what their Republican members of Congress, that their Republican members of Congress are advancing a budget that would cut $1 trillion for Medicaid in service of those tax cuts to the rich. And that's not enough. We have to actually build an alternative. So to recruit and run our own candidates, to use the power that we build through those elections to govern with and for working people, and to do it all with a really clear-eyed and laser-focused understanding that our enemy is not our neighbors. It's billionaires, it's greedy corporations, it's the wealthy and well-connected who have had too much influence over our political system for too long.
And you have criticized the Democratic establishment at, you know, national and state level for not really doing enough in this moment. You said in a recent article, over the first 2 months of the new administration, we've seen states with Democratic trifectas and supermajorities duck for cover. Instead of exercising their power to make life better for working people and respond to devastating actions at the federal level, they kowtow to corporate lobbyists and wealthy donors. So, if you could speak to kind of your concerns with the current Democratic establishment as well.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats have triple blue trifecta majorities in 15 states, and they should be using their power in each one of those states to do two things. One, to improve the lives of working class people who are strained and suffering and the cost, the cost of living, like who are really stretched at this point. And two, to Trump proof their states, right? I mean, we are just going to see from the sort of trickle down effects of the federal government, we're going to see decimated state budgets. We're going to see, funding and essential services cut. Like there is so much to prepare for. And I think this legislative session, which is more or less wrapped up in most states, there were certainly some bright spots. Like there was a child care package passed in Connecticut, which reduces costs of daycare and preschool and raises pay for workers. Colorado passed groundbreaking immigrant rights legislation. So like there are some good things, but for the most part, we were pretty disappointed. And just two examples, in Colorado, Governor Jared Polis vetoed a bill that we were backing at WFP that would have made it easier for workers to form a union. Like, why in this moment? Like it makes no sense. In Delaware, the state legislature passed a bill that could result in a $56 billion giveaway for Elon Musk. The bill was literally written by his lawyers. And the WFP legislators in the state house were the only ones to vote against it. And then just going back to where I started, Democratic leaders in trifecta states have not adequately prepared for the budget challenges that will come with federal funding cuts in the Trump administration. For example, Connecticut and Rhode Island both had proposed millionaires taxes this year that would have taken a step towards that preparedness and softened the blow of that those cuts will inevitably have. And in this extraordinary year where it's so clear why that matters, neither bill moved forward. So, I think we are just, it feels like a moment going back to kind of where, what I was saying about Ras Baraka and Brad Lander, like this is a moment for bold leadership. And that's what we're looking for from places where Democrats have governing power and can really be doing things to both improve people's lives and also mitigate the harm of, federal actions on folks that are living in their states.
What do you think is stopping Democratic lawmakers from taking, more decisive action to support working families? I think the assumption is often that it's money and corporate lobbying, which I think is probably a big part of it. But are there other things? Is it just a sense that they don't want to challenge the norms? Is it a disconnection from like what people are really experiencing? I just, would love to get your thoughts on that.
That is a great question. I mean, obviously, we have seen time and time again just the disproportionate power of corporate lobbyists and wealthy folks in our state legislatures. Like they are structurally designed to put those interests first. And in so many instances, those are the kind of like moderating forces, right? The threat of people fleeing, which of course never manifests to reality or, any of that kind of stuff. And also this is a moment where a lot of people in a lot of places are feeling fearful, inhibited, and paralyzed. Like that is a real experience of, I'm sure any person who cares about, um, like good things happening in our country has felt that way at some point between now and January. And so, I think the other thing, and this is the work we do every day, is we believe that legislators are like any other people in our society. They have to be organized because they will be braver, they will go into action. And so, I think that's also like we need to supercharge our organizing so that folks are feeling courage and feeling agitation and feeling community and not feeling isolation and fear, which is easy to feel, in a moment like the one that we're in right now.
And then this is kind of going back to an earlier question I had asked, but I interviewed a conservative researcher who has written about kind of what red states are now doing to support families. And there's an interesting pro-family kind of segment of the right that is emerging, and some parts of it are not so great. And he pushed back on kind of some of the weirder, like pro-natalist fringes, like the Musks and people like that. But I would like to hear your take as someone who is, represents the Working Families Party. What is your take on this pro-family movement on the right? And what parts are good, what parts are bad?
Yeah. I mean, even predating whatever, like the kind of recent kind of emergence of some of this discourse, we've always known that pro-working families policies are popular everywhere, even in red states have been passing policies like minimum wage and paid sick leave by ballot for years, including Missouri, Alaska, and Nebraska in 2024 alone, and often by substantial margins. So I don't think it's like news that these policies are really popular among, Republican voters, Democratic voters, independent voters, all voters. It's pretty common sense. And, like in many of those instances, Republican legislatures have fought those bills or actively tried to repeal them or brought challenges against them. So I think we've seen in those instances, even when people are like, yes, this is what I want, it is not listened to because the Republican Party is also captive to corporate interests that are, that do not let their legislators do what is actually wildly popular with people. And I don't know, I looked a little bit into the article that you shared, and I mean, it's like interesting to see some scattered instances of Republicans passing policies. And I think we can all agree that universal free breakfast at schools is a good thing that helps people. But like the things that were lifted up were the rare exceptions to an agenda that is mostly focused on cutting taxes on the wealthy, allowing poverty wage jobs that, put tremendous stress on families to proliferate, refusing to expand healthcare, destroying public schools. Like these are not pro-family policies, period. And they are like the much more dominant platform of the Republican Party in most states. So, like it's like I'll like if yeah, it's sort of like deal with the thing that is actually happening. And that's what I see actually happening in the world.
And that's very, very interesting. And I don't, disagree where I'll kind of find a politician or something, a news story that seems really encouraging. And then you look a little bit further and see that like, okay, they've taken action in their own state to, Jesus, sorry, my like phone is ringing. They've like taken action in their own state to kind of uh, go against a lot of what they appear to be projecting for whatever reason. So it's very, very interesting. And then, do you, looking at just the craziness of right now and the insurmountable odds it seems like we are often against in trying to make life better for just regular people, do you have hope that we will see a better future for American families?
Yeah, I mean, of course I do. I mean, I think we all have to. And hope is an interesting word. I had the great honor and privilege earlier in my career to work for a few years with Adi Barkan, who was tragically diagnosed with ALS in 2015, actually, right, like literally like a month before Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and whose, powerful activism and story, first confronting Jeff Flake in a very dramatic event on the plane, and then kind of becoming, like really the conscience of like activism against Trump in the first term, and sadly passed just 2 years ago. Anyways, Adi is, inspired me and all of us. And Adi is the first person who shared a quote with me that I always hold from Rebecca Solnit, which is like, hope is not a lottery ticket that you can sit on the sofa and clutch, feeling lucky. It's an axe you use to break down the doors with an emergency. So absolutely, yes, I feel hope. And like I'm trying to use it to break down as many doors as I can. And I don't think there's no other way to imagine hope in this environment. And so hope is not an act of waiting, it's an act of acting. And as long as it's like that's why we're here doing this work.
It's a great quote. And then finally, what can people do to either support your mission or let's say they want to see, they're like, hey, how can, working families have a bigger presence in my local, whatever. What can people do?
Yeah, there are so many things. So if you are in a state with a working families chapter, obviously you can get involved with that. And anywhere you are, you can text WFP to 30403, and that will get you into like the pathway of getting involved in the party. You can look up our candidates, you can give money to them, you could vote for them, you could volunteer for them. And you can also just follow the Working Families Party on social media platforms for updates and calls to action.
Awesome. So, if you have any other like final thoughts on kind of something you'd want to share about the Working Families Party, otherwise, this, we could wrap this up. This is great.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity and just really encourage anyone anywhere to pick up their phone and text and get involved. And we're trying to build a thing that is never been built before, and we need everyone to do it. So I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much.